The city lights sparkled through the windows of Emilio, casting a glow over the luxurious interior. At the center of it all sat Ethan Carter, the epitome of success, celebrating his latest business triumph with his elegant girlfriend Sophie Collins. The evening radiated perfection until Ethan's eyes locked on a face he hadn't seen in years, one that carried both the weight of his past and a secret he couldn't ignore. Through the crowd of polished diners, a server appeared, weaving between tables with practiced grace. It was Emma Brooks, Ethan's ex-wife. The sight of her, the quiet determination in her step, the exhaustion etched on her face, and the undeniable curve of her pregnancy hit Ethan with the force of a storm, unraveling the perfect evening he had carefully constructed. For a moment he forgot Sophie's voice and the menu in front of him. All he could focus on was the woman who once meant everything to him, now carrying a child he knew nothing about. Ethan tried to focus on the evening, but his mind was still on Emma, carrying a plate of food to another table. She looked different, her polished elegance from years ago replaced by something quieter, almost fragile. Yet there was strength in the way she carried herself, even in her exhaustion. Sophie, oblivious to his distraction, leaned toward him with a smile. "What do you think of the Maldives next month?" she asked, her voice soft. "Okay," Ethan answered absently, his eyes flicking to Emma. A few minutes later, Emma approached their table, holding a notebook and a pen. She stopped beside them, her posture straight, her expression professional. "Good evening. How can I help you?" Ethan stiffened. Up close, her tired eyes and the shadows beneath them told a story he couldn't ignore. He struggled for words. "Let's get us something to drink first," Sophie said cheerfully, oblivious to the tension. Ethan's voice dropped. "Water, fizzy." Emma's eyes flickered to his for a moment, long enough for him to catch a glimpse of something. Pain, maybe resentment. She calmly noted their orders, then turned and walked away. Ethan watched her go, his appetite gone. For the rest of dinner, his thoughts remained focused on one thing: how did she get here? Years ago, Ethan Carter and Emma Brooks had been inseparable. They met at a small marketing firm, both ambitious and full of dreams. So Ethan was captivated by Emma's creativity and the way her laugh lit up a room. Together, they envisioned a future where love and partnership could conquer anything. In the early years, it seemed like nothing could go wrong. They supported each other through long nights and bold career moves. Ethan had big plans for Carter Enterprises, while Emma poured her heart into projects that reflected her passion for design and connection. But as Ethan's ambitions grew, so did the distance between them. Ethan became consumed by his work, spending late nights at the office and sacrificing weekends for client meetings. To him, every sacrifice was justified proof of his dedication to building a better future. But Emma saw things differently. She longed for presence, for a partner who could share the little moments that made life meaningful. "I don't need a penthouse or luxury trips, Ethan," she had said one night, her voice steady but laced with sorrow. "I just need you. But you're never really here." So then dismissed her concerns, insisting that his work was for them both. But the cracks in their relationship only deepened. Arguments replaced laughter, and silence filled the spaces where connection used to be. The breaking point came late one evening in their upscale apartment. Emma, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, finally admitted what Ethan had refused to see: she wasn't happy anymore. A week later, Emma moved out. Ethan convinced himself it was for the best, that they wanted different things. But as he sat in Emilio now, watching her from across the room, he felt the weight of every moment he had let her slip away. Dinner at Emilio's left Ethan Carter in a daze. He couldn't get Emma Brooks out of his mind, her tired eyes, her pregnant curves, the calmness with which she carried herself. He spent the rest of the night restless, staring out the window of his penthouse, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His thoughts drifted back to their time together, the conversations about their dreams in the middle of the night, the way Emma would curl up on the couch with a book, her laughter echoing through their apartment. How could he let all that go? The next morning, Ethan couldn't concentrate. Meetings faded into the background, and even congratulatory calls about his latest purchase felt meaningless. By mid-afternoon, he'd given in to the overwhelming urge to learn more about Emma's life. He called Lila, a mutual friend they'd drifted apart from after their divorce. Lila wasn't surprised to hear from him. "I was wondering when you'd be in touch," she said, her voice both amused and cautious. "Have you seen Emma lately?" Ethan asked, trying to sound casual. There was a pause. "I have. She's been through a lot, Ethan," Her interior design business struggled after she quit. She's working at Emilio's for a living now. Ethan's chest tightened. Emma had always been fiercely independent, driven by a desire to create something meaningful. The thought of her giving up that dream to work as a waitress hurt more than he expected. "What about the baby?" he asked softly. "It was Emma's and her ex-boyfriend's, but he left as soon as he found out she was pregnant," Lila replied. Ethan felt both guilty and heavy regretful. Emma had wanted to start a family with him, but he had been too busy with his career to give her that. Now she was struggling with motherhood on her own. "She didn't tell me anything," he muttered. "She wouldn't," Lila said firmly. "Emma's proud, Ethan. She's not the type to ask for favors, especially not from you." The conversation ended, but Lila's words lingered. Ethan spent the rest of the day lost in memories and questions. He had convinced himself that their divorce was inevitable, but now he wasn't so sure. He had moved on with his career, his wealth, even Sophie, but seeing Emma again made him realize that some things weren't so easy to leave behind. That night, Ethan sat silently, staring at the city skyline. For the first time in years, he felt cracks forming in the foundation of the life he had built. The next evening, Ethan Carter found himself back at Emilio, seated alone at a corner table. His usual confidence was absent, replaced by a quiet nervousness he couldn't shake. He had no clear plan, only the hope of speaking to Emma Brooks again. It wasn't long before she appeared, weaving through the tables with the same composed efficiency. When her gaze landed on Ethan, she hesitated, her expression guarded. Taking a deep breath, Ethan gestured for her to come over. "Ethan," she said evenly, her tone carefully neutral. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." "I was hoping we could talk," he said, his voice low, "just for a few minutes." Emma glanced around the restaurant, clearly wary of being overheard. "I'm working," she replied, her posture stiff. "I know," Ethan said quickly, lowering his voice further, "but please, after your shift." For a moment she looked like she might refuse. Then, with a reluctant sigh, she nodded. "Fine. 10 minutes. Out back." Hours later, Ethan stood in the alley behind the restaurant, the distant hum of the city filling the air. Emma emerged, her apron gone and her hair falling loose around her shoulders. She crossed her arms, her stance defensive as she leaned against the brick wall. "What do you want, Ethan?" she asked bluntly. He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I saw you last night, and I couldn't stop thinking about you." Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. "Why now? It's been years. You've moved on. So have I." I don't know," he admitted honestly, "but seeing you like that pregnant, working here made me realize how much I don't know about your life anymore. I want to help." Emma's eyes narrowed. "Help? Do you think I need saving?" "No," Ethan said firmly. "I think you're stronger than I ever gave you credit for, but that doesn't mean you have to do everything alone." Emma's expression softened for just a moment before her guard went back up. "I don't need your pity, Ethan." "It's not pity," he said, taking a small step closer. "It's regret and concern. I know I let you down before, but I want to be here now for you and for the baby." She studied him carefully, her arms still crossed. "Why? Why do you even care after all this time?" "Because I never stopped," Ethan said softly. "Even when I told myself I didn't. And seeing you again reminded me of that." Emma let out a slow breath, her eyes flickering with a mix of emotions. "I don't know if I can trust you, Ethan. Not after everything." "You don't have to decide that now," he replied gently. "Just let me prove it, no strings attached." Emma hesitated, her hand unconsciously brushing over her belly. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but only because it's for the baby." Relief washed over Ethan, though he knew this was only the beginning. As she walked back inside, he stood in the quiet alley, determined to prove that this time he wouldn't let her down. The call came late in the evening, just as Ethan Carter was wrapping up a meeting. The voice on the other end was frantic. It was Lila, their mutual friend. "Ethan, Emma's been taken to the hospital," she said hurriedly. "She went into labor early. She's asking for you." You. Ethan's heart stopped. "Is she okay? The baby?" "She's stable, but they're monitoring her closely. She's scared, Ethan. You need to get here." Ethan didn't waste a second. He grabbed his keys and drove himself to the hospital, the city's glowing streets blurring past him. His usual calm demeanor had vanished, replaced with panic and a desperate need to be by Emma's side. When he arrived at the maternity ward, he found Emma Brooks lying in a hospital bed, pale and sweating, her hands gripping the rails as another contraction hit. She looked up as he entered, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and fear. "You came," she said weakly. "Of course I did," Ethan replied, stepping to her side. He took her hand, holding it firmly as another wave of pain rippled through her. "The baby's early," she whispered once the contraction passed. "They said it's not ideal, but we'll be okay, right?" "You will be," Ethan said firmly, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "You're the strongest person I know, Emma. You've got this." For hours, Ethan stayed at her side, his hand clasping hers as the labor progressed. He whispered words of encouragement, marveling at her strength as she fought through the pain. The sterile room was a whirlwind of activity. Nurses and doctors moved quickly, adjusting monitors and offering updates, but to Ethan, none of it mattered, except Emma and the life she was bringing into the world. But when the baby's first cry filled the air, time seemed to freeze. The doctor held up a tiny, wriggling form and announced, "It's a boy." Emma collapsed back against the bed, tears streaming down her cheeks as the nurse placed the baby in her arms. Ethan leaned in, his gaze fixed on the small, perfect face nestled against her. "He's perfect," Emma whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "He is," Ethan agreed, his throat tight. For a moment, the world outside the room ceased to exist. Ethan could only see Emma and their son, a new life that symbolized hope and second chances. As the nurse gently took the baby to clean and swaddle him, Ethan turned back to Emma, his hand resting on hers. "You are incredible," he said softly. "I've never seen anything like that." Emma let out a tired laugh. "I didn't think I could do it. Not without you." Her words hit Ethan with the force of a tidal wave. He swallowed hard and took a deep breath. "Emma, there's something I need to say." She looked at him, her gaze steady despite her exhaustion. "What is it?" "Seeing you like this, watching you bring a new life into the world, it made me realize how much I've been missing," Ethan began, his voice thick with emotion. "You've always been incredible, Emma. And I think I've always loved you." Emma's eyes widened slightly, her lips parting in surprise. "I know I don't deserve another chance," he continued, his words tumbling out. "But I want you to know that I'm here for you, for the baby, for whatever you need, friend, co-parent, anything. The choice is yours." Emma stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Ethan feared he had said too much, pushed too far. But then her hand tightened around his, and a faint smile curved her lips. "You've changed, Ethan," she said softly. "I can see it. And I think we can figure this out. Together." Relief and hope surged through him, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. It wasn't long before Sophie Collins noticed the change in Ethan. What began as subtle distractions, missed conversations, his gaze drifting off mid-sentence soon became impossible to ignore. She confronted him one evening at his penthouse, her stilettos clicking sharply against the marble floor as she set her purse down with force. "Ethan," she began, her voice sharp yet controlled, "we need to talk." Ethan, seated on the couch, looked up from his phone, already bracing himself. "What's on your mind?" "What's on my mind?" Sophie's tone was laced with frustration. "You've been distant, distracted, ever since that night at Emilio. And I know why." Ethan stiffened but didn't speak. "It's her, isn't it?" Sophie continued, crossing her arms. "The waitress, Emma, your ex-wife. Don't bother denying it. I saw the way you looked at her." "Sophie," Ethan said carefully, setting his phone aside. "This isn't what you think." "Oh, isn't it?" she snapped, her composure slipping. "Because it seems pretty obvious to me. You've been preoccupied with her ever since. And now I hear you've been to that restaurant again, asking for her." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're right," he admitted. "It is about Emma. Seeing her again brought back a lot, and I've realized I need to be there for her. She's pregnant, Sophie, and she's doing it alone." Sophie's eyes widened in disbelief. "So what? You're gonna play the hero now? Step in and save the day?" "That's noble of you, Ethan, but what about us?" "This isn't about being a hero," Ethan said, his voice firm. "It's about doing what's right. Emma was she is someone I cared about deeply. I can't just turn my back on her." Sophie let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. Unbelievable. You're willing to throw everything we have away for someone who's not even part of your life anymore. Ethan stood, his expression calm but resolute. That's the problem, Sophie. She's part of my life whether I wanted to admit it or not. And honestly, I think we both know this isn't working. You and I, we're not building anything real. Sophie's face froze, her carefully composed mask cracking. So that's it? You're ending this for her? I'm ending this because it's the right thing to do for both of us, Ethan replied gently. Sophie grabbed her purse, her movements sharp and deliberate. You're going to regret this, Ethan, she said coldly, heading for the door. You always regret letting someone like me go. The door slammed behind her, leaving Ethan alone in the quiet penthouse. He stood there for a long moment, the weight of his decision settling over him. It wasn't easy, but it felt right. For the first time in years, he was choosing to prioritize something other than ambition or appearances. Emma and the baby needed him, and deep down, he realized he needed them too. Over the next few days, Ethan Carter found himself drawn deeper into her world. He visited the hospital every day, holding baby Oliver in his arms and marveling at the little creature who had suddenly become the center of everything. For the first time in years, his focus shifted from boardrooms and business deals to something much more meaningful. Emma, though initially hesitant, began to let her guard down. She saw changes in Ethan, not the ambitious, driven man who had once put work above all else, but someone genuinely trying to rebuild what had been broken. One afternoon, as the autumn sunlight streamed through the hospital window, Emma glanced at Ethan holding Oliver. His large hands cradled the baby with surprising tenderness, and the sight soothed something inside her. You really do love the baby, she said softly, her voice tinged with warmth. Ethan smiled, his eyes never leaving Oliver. I've fallen in love with him, he replied. You're amazing, Emma. I don't know how you did it all by yourself. Emma hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of the blanket. I didn't have much choice, she admitted. I had to keep going. For him. Ethan finally looked up, meeting her eyes. You don't have to do it alone anymore. I'm here, for both of you. Emma looked at him for a long moment. There was something new in his eyes, an honesty and determination and vulnerability she had never seen before. We'll see, she said softly, not ready to fully trust him, but willing to let him try. As the months passed, Emma began to trust Ethan more deeply. Together, they navigated the challenges of parenthood and slowly rebuilt their connection, step by step. Ethan's patience and sincerity paved the way for something new, not the heady passion they once shared, but a steady, enduring bond built on respect and shared purpose. Ethan also began channeling his business acumen into community-focused projects inspired by Emma's passion for local artisans. His company launched a grant program for small design businesses, and he ensured Emma's studio was part of the initiative not as a favor, but because he believed in her talent. Their new life wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time, both Ethan and Emma felt like they were on the right path, not as the people they once were, but as stronger, wiser versions of themselves.